We're going to take a look at a curious relic of Poland's communist past, the 50 Zloty note issued in 1988, and the man whose face it bore, General Karol Świerczewski. Now, on the front of this note, you'll find Świerczewski himself, kitted out in full military regalia, staring off into the glorious socialist future. Or so he hoped. But if you flip the note over, you won't find rolling fields or smiling workers. Instead, you're met with a big, bold cross with two swords, the Grunwald cross, to be precise. Now, at first glance, you'd be forgiven for thinking it might be a religious symbol. After all, Poland is a fiercely Catholic country. But no, this cross has nothing to do with the Church of Rome. It's the Grunwald Cross Medal. It's a military decoration cooked up by Poland's Soviet-backed communists during World War II. They named it after the Battle of Grunwald, a medieval victory Poles are rightly proud of, and twisted it into a modern socialist symbol. It was meant to link communist fighters like Świerczewski with Poland's ancient tradition of heroism. In short, it's propaganda dressed up in an historical costume. Now, this note was issued in 1988, right at the tail end of communist rule in Poland. And by the time it was issued, the currency was already in deep, deep trouble. The zloty was in freefall. Inflation was galloping along at a rate that would make a Weimar banker blush. Within just a few years, the note was practically worthless. You'd have needed a suitcase full of them just to buy your groceries. So, what was the root of this economic disaster? A crisis was brewing throughout the 1970s and 1980s, thanks to years of catastrophic mismanagement under the communist regime. Polish factories were churning out goods nobody wanted, farmers were shackled by quotas that made no sense, and the government printed money in a desperate and frankly futile attempt to appease a population that had long since stopped believing in socialism. In the end, the whole communist regime in Poland came crashing down, and the country set out, painfully at first, on the long road towards a market economy. By the early 1990s, Poland had no choice but to wipe the slate clean. 10,000 old zloty became one new zloty as part of the Great Currency Reform of 1995. And with that, the proud image of General Świerczewski disappeared from Polish banknotes. But who exactly was this fellow Świerczewski, who ended up being honoured on socialist Poland's currency? He was born in Warsaw in 1897, back when Poland was still carved up by foreign empires. Coming from a poor working-class family, he immigrated to Russia as a young man, just before the Russian Revolution exploded into life. And here's where his story takes a sharp turn. When the Bolsheviks seized power in 1917, Świerczewski threw in his lot with them, joining the Red Army. He fought in the Russian Civil War, helping to crush the anti-communist white forces and entrench Lenin's brutal new order. Fast forward to the 1930s, and Świerczewski found himself fighting again, this time in the Spanish Civil War. Under the name of General Walter, he commanded international brigade units fighting for the Republican side against Franco. In this role, he gained a certain fame or notoriety, depending on your political perspective. It was a bloody, chaotic war, and by all accounts, Świerczewski distinguished himself less for his tactical brilliance and more for his fanatical loyalty to the communist cause. In any event, the Republicans in Spain lost the war, and Świerczewski found himself back in the Soviet Union. He managed to survive Stalin's murderous purges of the 1930s, something that was quite an achievement for a Pole. Then came World War II, and with it another opportunity. Świerczewski supported the Red Army, and through a long and winding road, he ended up back in his homeland. But when Świerczewski returned to Poland, he led the First Polish Army, a force entirely under Soviet control. He marched westward with the Red Army, helping to liberate Poland, or, as most Poles would tell you, to replace Nazi occupation with Soviet domination. After the war, Świerczewski was rewarded handsomely. The Soviets regarded him as someone they could trust and would do whatever Moscow ordered him to do. He was made Deputy Minister of Defense in the new puppet government installed by Moscow. He played a key role in suppressing the anti-communist resistance, the so-called cursed soldiers, brave men and women who had the audacity to think Poland should actually be free and believed that the country should not fall under the control of the Soviets and their Polish stooges in Warsaw. But Świerczewski's life came to an abrupt and violent end in 1947. While travelling through southeastern Poland, a volatile region simmering with unrest, he was ambushed and killed by Ukrainian nationalist partisans. His death gave the regime a perfect excuse to carry out Operation Vistula, the brutal forced deportation of over 140,000 Ukrainians living in Poland. The communists seized on his death as a propaganda gift. He was instantly elevated into a martyr, a hero of the working class. His image was everywhere. Statues, schools, even banknotes like the one we're discussing today. Świerczewski wasn't just a man anymore. He was a myth who symbolized communist Poland's supposed strength and righteousness. But, and here's the important thing, history has a funny way of catching up with people like him. When communism finally collapsed in Poland in 1989, the myth of Karol Świerczewski collapsed with it. His statues were pulled down, his name stripped from schools and streets, and his face quietly removed from public life. Poles were no longer interested, to put it mildly, in honouring a man who collaborated with the Soviets and who had helped snuff out their hard-won dreams of independence. And so, just like the worthless 50 Zloty note, Świerczewski's place in Polish memory faded into oblivion.